Welcome to our webinar, The Power of Questions in a UDL Environment by OCALI. And I'm your host, Ron Rogers. Please remember, though, that our webinars are interactive, so be ready to comment and or answer polling questions. I'd also like to remind all the participants that some people are listening to this live webinar while they're driving. So at points, I'll read the slides because we don't want our drivers to be looking at their phones or iPads. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, just a warning up front. The 30 minutes is about getting you excited about questions. So we'll be brushing up on them in a fun and lighthearted way together. Just in case you're listening to this webinar, again in your vehicle, we'll take a few moments and I will read the goal and the I can statements. So the goal is explain how questions can be utilized in the classroom. The I can statements are, I can discuss the importance of questions in education. I can ask questions to create changes in thinking, and I can discuss the art of questioning. So please type in the area that says put question here, and we can see your posts. So this is the area where you can interact with us, and we'll read a lot of your posts to share. There's also a button you can click to raise your hand. Now I'll try to look for those different things. If I miss them, don't feel bad, because I'm kind of running this on my own. So let's practice the typing part. Please type into the question box if you're alone right now, or if you have some learners that have joined you for this webinar in the same room. And I'll read some of your answers out loud. Okay, one person answered definitely alone. This is kind of that interaction type of thing. Solo, alone. One person says, hi Ron, all by myself, thanks. So it appears that people are pretty much alone on this one and not in groups. I know sometimes people will sit with their building leadership teams or their teacher-based teams and watch our webinars as groups, but that doesn't look like it's happening so far today. So for those of you that are on, just be ready for this interactive type of stuff throughout. Okay, if you're one of those people that like to tweet, please use the hashtag UDLPLN. And there is a benefit to having a conversation in the background and answering each other's questions or telling your own personal stories, on this back channel called Twitter. So, you know what? I will try to monitor the tweets, but I probably won't get to them until after the webinar. It's a little, it just takes a little more to keep everything balanced. So here we go. Take a few seconds to consider this statement. Then type your question, and then type in your question box what you feel this may mean. I'll read some of your comments, but if you have any idea what that might mean, just go ahead and put them in the question box where you put your other question type things. Questions can extend thinking. Absolutely. Allowing students to question, it helps drive the dialogue. Using questions to help students direct their thinking and be more independent rather than just giving the answers, yes. We aren't the owner of the answers. Encourage collaboration and questioning by asking questions. These are all excellent, excellent thoughts and ideas. Excellent, okay. Let's do a poll question next. I'm going to pull up a poll question, and the question is, who uses questions now in their classrooms to enrich learning? And now you can put your answer in there. Who uses questions now in their classrooms to enrich learning? And just select I do or I do not. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wait here just for another minute. We have 59% voted. And of course, you know what? We're not going to get 100% voted because I can guarantee there's some people in their cars driving. Or some are just listening in on the phone and not on the actual webinar with a screen. So I'm going to close the poll at 63% voted. And I'm going to share the results. And as you can see, the I do is 94% and the I do not is 6%. Man, I should probably turn this over to one of you because 94% is great. Okay, let's move on. I need to close the poll. Oops. And we're back. Okay, for those of you that might be non-believers, as students, as you look at this chart, I'll kind of explain it for those that may not be looking at it. And even when you are looking at it, it's good to have somebody explain it. As students question less, they become less engaged according to a Gallup study. The chart clearly reflects 76% of students are engaged in elementary school, 61% in middle school, and then 44% in high school. Not the kind of trend line we like to see. Stop and think about who gets to ask those questions in class. Does it touch on purpose, power, control, and possibly race and social class? That's a big one. So please keep that in mind and think about, even though you might be one of those 94% that uses polls, think about that. Does it touch on purpose, power, control, and possibly race and social class? Who do you really pick? Who do you really pick to answer questions? And fear is a lot of times, the enemy of curiosity too. So, do you believe there's a link between questions and student engagement? And what if we could find a way to help parents ask better questions at school meetings? Think about those things on your own and see what kind of answers you give yourself. Let's look at another one. This chart shows the value of questions will go up and answers down as our world becomes more complex and dynamic. So, are questions becoming more valuable than answers? So, as we think about our future and our students and our learners and, how we maybe conduct meetings or classes, maybe it's time, instead of always looking for that perfect answer, maybe we should try to shape that perfect question, one that's going to take us further than anything ever has. And as long as you hang out with me, for the rest of this time, you're going to find out some things that you may never thought about before. Let's get ready for that third poll question. Do you, on a normal basis, have students create rich, engaging questions specifically targeted toward the learning standard? I will start the poll. And launch it. So this is another I do or I do not. Jiminy. We got people are voting fast and hard. Give it another 5 seconds. Come on, one more vote. Yes, there we go. We're back to that same percentage that voted the last time. So I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to share it. And there we go. We see that I do's are 35% and I do nots are 65%. Yeah, we really got to work on getting those learning standards in there. A lot of us talk about how we just don't have time to do certain things, but if we really zero in on the learning standards, it makes it a lot nicer, because then we know we're hitting exactly what we need to. So let's hide the results, and we're going to move on. CAST, a couple of weeks ago, released a new look for the UDL guidelines. They're the same guidelines, however, with improved representation. The brains now have brain stems. They now offer some with numbers and a PDF without numbers. So for those that like the numbers, can download the PDF with them or without them, or however they like them. They also have added some tabs on the side, so it's clear how someone could go across the guidelines parallel as well as horizontal or up or down. In the past, we always went up or down and moved towards purposeful and motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, or goal-directed. But now we can move across with access, or across with build, or across with internalize, and then the goal is down at the bottom with that tab labeled goal. Well, looky here. This is supposed to be a Polaroid camera, and that's a picture coming out the bottom. And it's an Instamatic. Okay, I just want to get that ready. So when you think about the Polaroid camera or the Instamatic or the SX70 land camera or whatever name you want to give it, a lot of people don't know the story behind that. And the story is pretty incredible because Mr. Land, the one that came up with the whole idea, he didn't exactly come up with the idea himself. It was actually through a question that his daughter had raised as a little girl. So Land in his story explains how his very young daughter asked him one day why she couldn't see the picture right away. Yeah, they were out, they were taking pictures and stuff, and his little daughter just looked at him and just kind of, with those soft eyes, looked up at him and almost with tears in them and said how she just would like to see the picture now, and why couldn't she? So Mr. Land got to thinking about that, and he asked himself another question, which was, what if we could have a dark room inside a camera? What if we could have a dark room inside a camera? And these questions kept driving his thought. And sometimes when you come up with that unique question, you find that question will lead to more questions, which lead to more questions. However, as you work through them, you can a lot of times come up with something that's never been had before. And he came up with the SX70. I had a Pronto B when I was younger. And if you remember, it was kind of like a box. You'd load it into the front of the camera, you'd close it. And when you took the picture, it was like a dark room in that box. And then the picture came out and you could watch it develop before your eyes. It was pretty interesting. So with that said, let's go ahead and start breaking down the UDL piece of it that goes along with all of this. So for this 30-minute presentation, we've decided to focus in on engagement. And again, this is Cass' new look, and you can tell at the top, the active networks and the why of learning. And as you look at that, I'm gonna focus you in slide by slide here in case you're not real familiar with UDL. Again, we're going to focus in on the multiple means of engagement, and we're going to think about questions. So let's look at this. Optimize relevance, value, and authenticity. So one thing that we can do through getting our students to ask these really solid, beautiful questions is to connect learning to experiences that are meaningful and valuable. And when we do that, we know through the research and through the brain research that engagement's going to rise. Another area through the principles is to look at sustaining effort and persistence. By fostering collaboration and community, we can cultivate a community of learners. So, think about that sometime. You got some learners around the table, and instead of them searching maybe for an answer to something, they work together and come up with a really unique question. I'm kind of pausing here and there just to kind of let this sink in. So let's look at another one as we go down. And we're just going down the column of engagement in our UDL guidelines. So let's look at this one. Self-regulation. Promote expectations and beliefs that optimize motivation. Set personal goals that inspire confidence and ownership of learning. When you think about the UDL guidelines and the principles and the checkpoints, and we know that that's a solid framework to move forward, and we think about how questions could come from this area and promote so much engagement. And we absolutely, we want to optimize the motivation as much as possible. And we know from the literature that questions, come from our youngest students and still flow through our older ones, but maybe not as much through our older ones. However, we can try to change that. And again, our total goal for that is purposeful and motivated learners. And remember, one end goal, for this is too, we're getting our students ready for what's after school, whether it's go to a university and create a career that way, or a technical college or school, or whether it's going right into the workforce. But we want our students to be expert learners, and we want them to be purposeful and motivated. And even as teachers, we can create questions ourselves and model that for our students. Let's do another poll question. This one's going to be a little more fun. If I were to implement questions into my classroom, what might change? I'm going to pull that question up. I'm going to launch it. Here we go. Select one of the following or more. Students would be more engaged. Students would rebel and be uncontrollable. Students would feel empowered. Students would have ownership of their learning. Teachers would feel less in control. Pick one, pick a couple. And I'm going to throw them up here in a minute. 54% voted. Let's try to get that up a few more percentage points, and then we'll... Okay, we're at the exact percentage that we have been every time. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to share the results. Students would be more engaged, 90%. Students would rebel and be uncontrollable, 0%. Oh, that's good. Students would feel empowered, 86%. Students would have ownership of their learning, 81%. And teachers would feel less in control, 14%. One of the things that I challenge myself to every day is to try to do something that makes me feel a little less control-ish, or a little less, that makes me feel a little uncomfortable, I should say. Every day I try to do something that makes me feel just a little bit uncomfortable, because I know if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm probably learning. And I know it's hard to do, but we should always challenge ourselves to do that. Very good. I'm going to hide the results, and we're going to move on. So, with all of that said, the UDL environment does support questions. And, in 20 minutes, which we've covered so far, a lot can happen in 20 minutes. And, again, just giving you a little taste of what questions can do and how you can use that UDL framework to make that happen. You really don't need a crystal ball to be able to support an environment of questions. And, let's not forget design thinking, growth mindset, equity, personal learning, literacy. We can make a list. But please remember to use, the UDL guidelines, principles to do some of these things. Now, we know, because we looked at it, that young kids are really good at asking questions. But here you see a little girl, and, she's looking at that little 8-ball. And I just wonder how many of you, and you can put it in the question box real quick to chat, but how many of you or your kids had this 8-ball which they could ask questions and then receive answers? There are some comments in here, by the way. Yeah, the hashtag is hashtag OHUDL. And somebody said that's a great question. Asking students to develop the questions is so important. Deeper learning and engagement. Absolutely. Absolutely lots of fun. Still have the magic 8-ball. Yes. Yes, I love those. They are cool. And this girl loves hers, I can guarantee that. Okay, let's look at some self-reflection next. So as you think about the webinar that you've been on so far, what evidence would it take to convince you that using questions in your classroom or and maybe it's not just in your classroom, maybe, which I saw, there's administrators, there's directors, there's all kinds of folks on this webinar. You know, maybe at your next meeting you go to with your staff, you have an activity around generating a question instead of always looking for the solution or the answer. You know, how would that enhance, the way we think? If you think about Mr. Land and how he came up with the idea of the Polaroid, and by the way, you're going to get a lot of handouts with this. So please follow them through. Go to the website, beautiful question. Look at all the things that came out of great questions and how it's moved our world and our country to do better things. So how do you collect that evidence in your classroom? That's just a reflection question for the way home. Another one, maybe for supper time, you can think about drafting your own, well-crafted, intentioned question. Sometimes when we're looking for an answer, it's better to go back and to ask that really good question to ourselves. And I know through reflection and through different things that we're all trained and through our coaching and all those things, but really sit down tonight when you have time, maybe over, whatever, and just think about, writing out a really good question, one that can really feed the work. So one of the things you can do if you want to go deeper with the importance of questions, here's a couple books for you. A More Beautiful Question, which is The Power of Inquiry to Spark Breakthrough Ideas. One of those books is a little older. One of them is a little newer. The newer one's the light blue one, I believe. And that's one resource. Another resource, well, actually, if you hold your phone up and grab that, or if you write down the bit.ly link, you'll get a whole folder full of resources, and they're all really excellent ones. And some of the resources were attached to this webinar that you could have downloaded earlier. But all of these will be included, when you get your thank you for attending and stuff in one day and 1 hour. And there's still a lot more comments coming in. Sometimes just asking why can feed the work. Exactly. Developing good questions makes me think further, clarify what we're really after, what we really want our students to take away from the learning. Absolutely. Pamela's already thanking me, but we're not quite done yet, Pamela. The next webinar is the UDL Framework and Culturally Relevant Pedagogy Together Forever, and that'll be Wednesday, March 14th. And that's something you want to get signed up for. And of course, it just wouldn't be right without letting you know that the UDL chat, our 24/7 UDL chat is for you. It's for people to participate around the world. It's fun. It's hashtag UDL chat at 9 p.m. Eastern time every first and third Wednesday, or like Cass likes to say, it's 24/7. So, with all of that said, and a lot of people are sending in that they love the question idea and everything. And again, I just want to add, this is only as good as participants take it. So, hopefully this really got your appetite whet, and you can look at the resources and gain a bigger understanding and a deeper understanding. I can guarantee it will raise engagement with your kids. So as usual, our hope is that you've gained some more knowledge on the power of questions in a UDM environment. We understand this is only 30 minutes. However, in our profession, the real learning comes after the webinar, during the discussion and reflection with our colleagues. You're leaving with a reflection question plus a lot of resources so you can further learn long after this webinar is over. We know your time's precious, and we want to make every minute worth your time. So thank you so much for attending. We hope your curiosity has been raised, along with your engagement and excitement to use high-end questions in your classroom. Thanks a lot, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, everybody.